Welcome to my biggest project yet, here in my currently unnamed Minecraft city, where I'm going to take you through the process of building a brand new marina for hundreds of boats, including all the stumbling blocks along the way. Let's get right into it. Hello, in this video I'll be collaborating with Fredharris to transform this measly patch of decking into a sprawling marina that any millionaire will feel happy to dock their yacht in. Now over here, because there isn't much space between these pontoons, I'm going to start with a small 3-block wide sailing boat. At such a small scale, I did struggle to get some convincing curves to look good, but eventually I figured out a design I was happy with. And now I can change the colours and add some iron bars and things for some variety. One down, many more to go. For next one, I had a go at designing a fishing boat, inspired by a smaller version of what I saw Fredharris was working on. However, I was working on a much smaller scale, and I wasn't very good at the details and machinery, so yeah, I kinda just had to leave this. But I'm still happy enough to place it into the marina. Let's get back to what I'm more used to and make some small pleasure craft. Again, this will be only 3 blocks wide, inspired by this photo here. You'll notice that for most of my builds, I'm sticking to blocks which have slab and stair variants in order to get the required detail, which is why smooth quartz and deep slate work really well, and they also create a nice contrast together. Right then, now I've got this simpler one done, I'm going to try something radical for this next sailing yacht. You see, most yachts you see, and those built in Minecraft, have a flared bow, meaning it goes out towards the top at the front. However, I'd like to try a straight stem bow, meaning it just goes vertically upwards to the top. To do this, I'm using walls to try and get a better curve at this scale, so that it's not too blocky. It will also need to be at least 5 blocks wide to work. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how unique this design is coming out to be. Now let's add some sails. What's good about building boats in dock is that you don't need to build mounted sails, so we can just add a few white blocks around the ropes and beams to make it look like they're all tied up. Again, I think this is a nice design to make a few varieties of colour, so I'm going to make a marine red hull using granite. Ooh, now this looks cool. Here's what it looks like with shaders, which just brings it to another level of realism and gives the whole area a lovely vibe. You can look forward to another shader shot at the end of the video, and this has really inspired me actually to fill in the empty space with boats. And it's worth mentioning that I'm using Google Maps to measure the size of the marina. In particular, this is the south of France I'm using for reference on Tibes. As you can see, those little boats are the ones I'm placing into place now. For a bit more variety in this part of the marina, I think I'll need to quickly design some more boats. First is this new variety of a sailing yacht, which is this time just white. Then I've designed a slightly larger pleasure craft using iron trapdoors to get a subtle curvature at the small scale at the edge. You can see here how I've powered them. Then I've done an alternate red colouring of the first yacht I designed, which then looks really nice in a row. Last up, I'm going to design a luxury yacht based on the size of the previous boat I designed, this time with a flared hull. Right, so this is the design I've come up with. As you can see, I've got a few varieties. Actually, the first one I designed is the one with the canopy here, inspired by this photo I saw, before I decided to remove it for a more classy look. So next, I'm going to create a whole new massive marina and city expansion over on this left side, while Fred designs some cool ships to go in this new marina.
This is the smallest boat I designed at 5 blocks wide, the smallest I wanted to go to keep a good shape. I know Hugo has built narrower ones, but I really like to mess around with the curvature. At this size, you're really relying on slabs and stairs, which means that for this boat, the bright orange of the rib is a bit of a muted colour using acacia wood instead. I add some detail by adding a motor to the stern, a control unit and some port and starboard lights. I also create a grey version of this boat. Here they are finished. And with shaders, I can reuse the hull of the rib to make a pleasure craft by making it white. This didn't quite work at first, as you can see here, because these boats would have an enclosed bow rather than an exposed one. Once I'd realised that, the rest was pretty simple, just closing up the bow, adding a windscreen and similar details, as the same engine, and I moved the control panel to the side. Then we can add a roof to create two versions. Here they are finished, and with shaders. Enough of this small stuff. Now let's move on to a bigger boat so we can get some nice detail. I decided that this would remain a shallow drafted vessel which would allow it to operate close to the shore. The bow could therefore be quite low as it wouldn't be operating in high waves. The superstructure I designed was bulky and square, but made interesting by the portholes, which are made using stairs with black concrete behind them. I'm going to keep the details pretty generic because, well, it's Minecraft. I added stuff like small cranes and storage spaces. On the mast I added port and starboard lights, as well as a small ship's radar and communications antenna. I also added some fenders to the side of the hull using these black walls. These are often inflatables or tyres that act to buffer the ship from taking damage against the pier or dock.
Sorry to interrupt, Fred, but I've got some progress on where your boats are going to go. So I've tried to keep it in line with what I've built on the right, so you've got some pontoons as well as areas of rock which are sort of facing the same direction, because I envisioned that these rocks are protecting the boats from the prevailing wind and waves, which I imagine would be coming from this side here. I've started roughly planning out some roads and roundabouts, ready to add some buildings and a car park by the edge.
I think in order to fill a marina, I need to design a sailing yacht. This is going to be a similar size to Hugo's larger ones, but I have a few tips to give. The key to getting these boats to look somewhat accurate is to have the hull go upwards on the top, rather than go flat. This shape gives more living space to those inside and is hence a common design. Let's add some portholes here to signify that you can in fact live inside. I kept the mast simple, adding a small radar to the top and a sail folded away along the bottom, and I used prismarine to represent the cover that's almost always put over when in the marina. I played around with adding ropes to it, but found it looked best with only the one rope connecting to the top of the mast and the bow. Time for a new challenge: catamarans. They consist of a superstructure supported above two smaller hulls. Each of these hulls is normally large enough to have a room or two in. This meant that the hull design had to be carefully considered, but altogether wasn't too difficult. The superstructure was more difficult as it needed to blend smoothly with the hulls and not just look like a box. So in this case, as with all of the ships, the tip is to continually modify the shape until you're happy with it. I then used the same methods for the windows and the mast as on the previous boats. Small details help to add to the boat's look, such as the beam connecting the bows together and the ladders into the water at the stern of each hull. Here it is finished. And with shaders? This is by far my favourite build. The fact that the scale is larger means that I can really perfect the curves and window shapes on it. At first I go a little off track trying to put a deck on the front, but I can't quite get it to work to a way that I'm happy with. Getting the front windows correct was also a new challenge. I eventually decided that they could be slanted backwards, which definitely completed the look. In terms of unique features, this ship has a really interesting mast. This I gave port and starboard lights, as well as an improved radar, which basically looks like a white sphere on top of large ships. I really enjoyed the windows on this ship, as I had lots of space to work with, and I could even put two exposed decks on the back, the bottom one giving direct access to the sea. Now let's shrink it down for a smaller version. Unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that, and it took quite a bit of work to get the shape right. I decided to add these three vertical windows to the side, which I think is quite a nice detail.
Right, yes, so I've designed this two-storey building here, and I've added some greenery at the front, but I don't think this quite fits in well with the old style restaurant, so we'll need to scrap it all. And this is what I've built so far in its place. As you can see, it's basically the same pattern this time as the restaurant or the balcony. But we've got a simpler flat roof so that it doesn't distract from the main build, which is the restaurant. Next I'm going to design some mid-rise buildings to accompany it. And because Fred's been building some industrial boats, I think a 70s California sort of style might accompany them well. Alright, so this is the design. As you can see, it's defined by these stark ribbon windows and balconies. But the main feature that will make it unique is to offset some of the higher floors by pushing them back a block each, just like this building here. And now we've got a nice 70s mid-rise building done, on the outside at least. Over to you, Fred.
Finally, for an even smaller yacht, I'll copy my sail version, but modify it with a front window and by extending the superstructure, and of course removing the mast. I wanted to make another working vessel, but this one larger and for deep water, as I know Hugo is working on a major expansion to the marina. To cope with larger waves, this ship has a much higher freeboard at the bow, the freeboard being the height of the deck above the water. But as this is a working vessel, the freeboard at the open section of the stern is much lower, leading to a cool two-height hull design. The superstructure is going to be very similar to the last one, so let's place that in. And now I'll add a big crane design as well as secondary lifting cranes on each side. Going back to the hull shape, I think the bow is far too pointy, so I've blunted it. This would increase buoyancy, stability and cargo space, at the cost of speed, which doesn't really matter for a ship like this. I realised all my commercial vessels were rather large, so let's design a small personal fishing vessel, starting with the hull of the rib as a base, extending it and adding a superstructure. Adding the roof created some additional shaping to the structure, but to really sell this as a fishing boat it had to be detailed. So I played around with this for a while, but decided on a few things. I liked the beam passing over the back as it would act as a place to attach equipment to, and the grindstones on the back acting as a place to attach a net. My favourite feature, however, is the tall wires pointing directly upwards. These could either be a communications mast, or perhaps even large commercial fishing rods. Now I'm ready to send all of these boats off to Hugo to put in the marina.
Sorry Fred, I'm not ready to add your boats yet. I need to finish off this area with some greenery. The mistake I made before was putting it on the inside, whereas this time I'm going to use the greenery and bushes as a dividing barrier to separate the two layers of pavement. And then we can place some tall palm trees in front, so that the building can just peep through. And now I can place some deciduous trees to make a small garden by the building, with a little bench, so people can relax and enjoy the view. So now it's finally time, the whole purpose of this video, to place in some more boats. You'll also notice that I've quickly designed some more facades, which I'll finish soon, so that I could get a nice backdrop for the boats. You might have noticed also that I've reused this design of building here, and just recoloured it using deep slate. To place in the boats across worlds, I am using structure blocks, which are a vanilla feature, so that I can just load in the name of the structure file. And first I've just placed them all in a row, so that now I can simply move them or paste them into place with World Edit. Alright, now I've got this side of the marina done with a few smaller yachts and one medium yacht. This is what the circular marina now looks like with some catamarans, which I thought fit quite well. And here is the commercial vessel placed into the commercial area of the marina, which will need expanding as there isn't much space for anything else around these fishing boats currently. Here we go, so I've just moved the central access way right a bit, which has given me the room to place in some of Fred's smaller fishing boats on the left side, as well as some of my sailing yachts to fill up this right side here. And now I've added another vessel that fits in snugly here. Don't worry, I'll change the colour very soon so that they're not identical. That would look a bit silly. While I'm changing the colour, I do actually need to deepen the marina, because these vessels have quite a low draft, which means currently they're scraping the bottom, and we can't really have that. And here's what it looks like now in black. These are all looking really good and have really added to the vibe of this place. However, there is one other that I'd like to add in here, and that's Fred's mega yacht. So to place this in, it initially looked pretty awkward to be honest, and I'd struggled to put it anywhere else. But then I decided to give it its own little walkway to access it, adding a little bend in the middle so that it matched the curve. And this is just one of those details that really brought it all together, and I really feel like I'd personally love to chill around here in real life. Adding a small rib next to it makes it feel a bit less lonely as well. Now it's finally time to remove the template boats so that we can do a big reveal with shaders. Luckily this is super simple to do with World Edit, so we can go straight onto some cinematic shots of today's progress. And here we are. I'm very happy with this progress. Just for reference, this is all there was before this massive marina expansion, and now we've got a whole new waterfront, and I love to explore it at all the different times of day. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the video, it'd be great if you could subscribe, as it always helps me out. And as always, thank you very much for watching.